Welcome back. I don't know about you, but when I go on vacation, I unplug. But when the president goes on vacation, it just means he has more time to tweet. In the week when this former campaign chairman is on trial and he and his lawyers huddle about whether he should talk to the special counsel investigating the Russia interference and obstruction of justice, in a week when the latest Republican in a ruby red congressional district gets shocked by a Democratic congressional candidate who has no business coming even close to winning, the president once again found time to tweet about NFL players kneeling or otherwise protesting about social injustice. Joining us for more are Nick Altier of the Sarasota Republican Party and Ronnie Jones, the president of the Manatee County NAACP. And Ronnie, let me get your take on the president's tweet today. The NFL players are at it again, taking a knee when they should be standing proudly for the national anthem. Numerous players from different teams wanted to show their outrage at something that most of them are unable to define, that make a fortune doing what they love to do. The quote there that I'm most interested in getting your reaction to is unable to define.
That would be par for the course, I would say. Many blacks feel that President Trump has a very poor opinion of African Americans, blacks, and also other minority groups. So that would definitely be par for the course, I feel, for his attitude that he's displayed since his rise to being the President of the United States. So.
Nick, does this play well with the president's base? Because after all, he is trying to gin up enthusiasm for the midterm elections, or would you prefer him not getting into the NFL?
Well, I think first and foremost, this was specifically the Dolphins, correct? Yeah. So they need to focus on winning before they're focusing on protesting. They've been letting me down for years. But as far as Trump, does it play well for his base? When I go to work each day, I don't protest at my job. And I think that the football players should go out there and focus on what they are paid to do and play ball. When it comes to Trump getting involved, I mean, Trump is the President of the United States, and he's involved in everything that happens. So if he feels the need to provide his opinion on this matter, by all means, just like they have the right to protest, he has the right to present his opinion. As far as the comment on, like, hating black people or what?
I don't think I said hate.
Or poor, what did you say exactly? Poor?
Poor opinion.
Poor opinion.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that either. I think he's been positioned for maybe having a poor opinion, but I haven't seen it, and I haven't really seen enough evidence to provide me with that.
But isn't that part of the problem, that Trump supporters don't believe that anything the president says in regards to this in particular goes to anything about his racial feelings, but many in the African community do think that, you know, it is what it is.
Well, I think one thing people need to dial back to and start taking into consideration is behind every label you give them, whether that's millennial, Democrat, Republican, white, black, or whatever race it may be, it's a human being behind that label. You know, and too often we forget that. Whether it's on social media or it's face-to-face, people aren't kind, and people need to start looking in the mirror and being nice to one another.
A quick reaction?
Yeah, I agree with, there's people behind it, and people have rights to express themselves. Standing up for the national anthem, that's a choice, and they do play when they go onto the field. I think they earn those paychecks. Those are highly competitive jobs, and jobs that have very short careers. The average length of stay in the NFL, I think, is about 3 years. So they have every right to protest, and I'm glad they're protesting. And actually, for Trump to do as North Korean dictator says, his mafia style of bullying people around, that doesn't resonate, and it should not resonate.
Okay, we have to take a quick break. Our conversation on the Week in Washington continues. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in Washington, and joining us for more are Nick Altier of the Sarasota Republican Party and Ronnie Jones, the president of the Manatee County NAACP. Let's talk a moment about the Russia investigation. The Manafort trial continues this week outside of Washington, D.C., and you also have the Madam of Manhattan testifying before a federal grand jury. And Ronnie, a lot of people, a lot of Republicans look at this and say, what does any of this have anything to do whether the Russians not only interfered with our presidential election, but whether anybody in the Trump campaign colluded or conspired with them?
I think it has everything to do with everything. I think people are forgetting about, have put business and growth and economy economics and power over character. Character should be the defining principle, and we can honestly say, I think all, regardless of where you may stand, this presidency has been unprecedented. With the behaviors, with the constant confusion, a lot of distractions at a time when the country truly does not to be distracted. You know, we talk about a thriving economy, but how do you have a thriving and a strong economy when you're $23 trillion in debt? You're borrowing money from your neighbors to pay.
Right.
I mean, who can operate a home with a deficit for same principles apply?
But Nick, let me get your reaction to what Rodney is saying about the issue of interference in character and the economy.
So I'm a Christian. I'm not going to defend a prostitution ring. I just never will. As far as corruption, it seems like there's a lot of corruption going on, or at least a lot of speculative corruption going on, from Tony Despito with the Clinton Foundation. I'm pronouncing his last name incorrectly. Accepting $500,000.
Do you mean Tony Podesta?
Podesta, yeah.
The chairman of Hillary's campaign's brother.
Yeah, accepting $500,000 from the Clinton Foundation to what you were just discussing. It's stuff that it's not good for our country.
Right. You also have a New York congressman, one of the president's first supporters in Congress when he was running, indicted this week for insider trading. But the question of, you know, poll after poll shows that something like 80 or more % of Democrats care deeply about the Russia investigation, and almost the same number of Republicans think it's a distraction.
Well, I think it's about time they produce some evidence. If they're going to continue with these accusations, they need to provide some legitimate, tangible evidence that can prosecute him or whatever it may be. But they haven't provided that. They haven't provided any of the evidence.
But
it's
you
all
don't
speculative.
know what Robert Mueller knows.
Well, and a lot of us, we talk about high-level subjects, and we don't know a lot of what those guys know. That's just, it's all speculative. That's an opinion.
All right, we have to take another quick break. We are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on The Week in Washington will continue right after this break. We have a lot to get through over the next few minutes, so let's start with the comments from Bill Nelson this week that he is aware that the Russians have penetrated Florida's election systems. He can't give more details, Rodney, because he says it's classified, and there's been a big outlash from the Secretary of State, who says, if you have information, you need it to relay it to us, and Governor Scott made the same kind of statement today. Was it wrong for Senator Nelson to make that claim without being able to show any kind of evidence of what he's talking about?
I think if he made the statement, he should produce. Because now I'm curious, and I'm pretty sure every other Floridian is curious, and if there is some definitive information, you may want to get that out to our communities so they can prepare, and the IT people can do whatever personnel can do whatever they need to do. So I think if somebody makes that kind of statement, which is a pretty heavy statement, I think it needs to be backed up with at least some form of fact.
Nick, Marco Rubio, the other senator, the Republican, has been saying, not in that kind of detail, but has also been signaling that we should be very concerned about Russian interference in the midterms. So these two guys get information that we don't get to see. Should we be taking it seriously, or or do you think the Governor Scott is kind of using this as kind of a campaign pinata right now?
Well, I'm curious. I mean, the accusation is a very strong accusation. Like, I agree with you. You should really produce something, a little bit of evidence. As far as Marco Rubio, opinion.
No, that's all right. Let's move on to our next subject. We had another special election this week in Ohio, in the district where the president won it by something like 11 or 12 points last November, and a Democrat has not won in that particular district since 1980. Nick, if a Democrat could win in a district like that, are you concerned about some of the congressional districts around here, let's say Vern Buchanan's district, which the president also won by 10 points in 2016?
Not at all. Vern Buchanan, he leads the way, in my opinion. He, right now, just passed the red tide bill. He's a great guy. He's very active in our community, and he's been solid. He's had proven success rate. I don't think there's any concern at all as far as swinging.
But you know, the Democrats nationally have targeted Vern Buchanan. Once again, they don't always. They have put David Shapiro on the red to blue list, which means that Shapiro is going to be getting a lot of money. That doesn't happen in every ruby red district in Florida.
No, but I'm still, there's no concern. Buchanan's a strong campaigner, and he does right, and people see that. They vote for the people who do right by their community, who they know can support their interests in Tallahassee.
Rodney, is this the year?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that district is polling there, so I'm not sure, you know, what the Democratic candidate may do. I'm actually a Democrat and Republican person to the wind right now. You know, as a lot of us are. I'm certainly supporting voting and getting extremely active with that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure of what's actually going on in that district and how strong those candidates are.
Because you and we're going to be talking about this in future shows, but you were really given by Charles Barkley's comments after the Alabama election that Democrats can no longer take for granted the African-American vote. You want Democrats and Republicans to come into Manatee County and basically earn your support.
Yeah, and what we're doing right now, we're organizing a way, we're organizing a black bloc vote. We've had our own internal debates with a couple debates with candidates, and we're organizing a block vote where we're going to decide which candidate meets the needs of our community, and we're putting all our votes behind one candidate instead of splitting off.
Well, shouldn't we be voting for a person and not a black vote? I mean, shouldn't we just be voting for the person who has the best interest in our community?
And we certainly are. That's why we said Democrat and Republican to the wind. We're looking for those that represent our needs in our community. And my perspective is probably going to be much different than yours due to the 400 years of conditions that we've endured here and still endure in 2018. So my perspective is going to be built largely around that, my community, my children, my family, and that. So our perspectives are going to be much different because
I'm sure there's a lot of anger still.
No, I didn't. Where did anger come from? I didn't say anger. I said my perspective.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not angry.
All right, let's turn to the governor's race for a second because we're dealing with something absolutely fascinating right now. I know Republicans who have supported Adam Putnam for governor for the last 20-some-odd years, and the Republican establishment has been anticipating this election, but the president endorses Ron DeSantis, and lo and behold, some polls now show DeSantis up by 20 points in the Republican primary. Nick, are you good with the president injecting himself in a Republican primary like this?
I think they should let the primaries go. I think it was a little early for him to step in. But again, he's a citizen of the United States. He has the right to endorse whomever he wants to, just like the Republican Party has, and other individuals who have endorsed Adam Putnam have that right as well. So with his influence, you really just have to wait and to see how the elections pan out in the primaries, because even though the polls have been incorrect a lot. They were very much incorrect about the election with Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, and yeah, we're seeing those numbers, but you won't really know until the election's results come in.
And Ronnie, let me talk about the Democratic side of things for a moment, because I know you're behind Andrew Gillum, but just weeks away from the primary, it seems that Gwen Graham has jumped out to, in some cases, a 9-point lead. Jeff Green, who has poured millions of dollars into his campaign, is not far behind. And Andrew Gillum is up on television. The ads are running on this broadcast, but it seems that he's not basically caught fire outside the progressive wing of the Democratic Party.
Right. I don't know. Time will tell here again. It's early still, and I don't know who can put a whole lot of credence in the polls now. They're depending on which side is paying the bill of whoever's doing the poll can sometimes influence and skew those numbers, I believe. So I've never been a big fan of polls and the accuracy thereof. But I'm not sure. We like Gillum in the community. He spent a lot of time in the community. We saw him more than others. Like some of his values, so we were definitely going to support him.
But if Gwen Graham, let's say, won this primary, would you be able to support her in the general election?
We're going to support the best candidate. That's what we're asking our community to do, Democrat or Republican Party to the win. And I just want,
What Republican candidate would you support?
For governor?
Or your list, like name your top 5, like.
Well, there are only 2 Republican candidates for governor.
Sure, but there's multiple elections going on right now.
Yeah. On the Republican side, I hadn't really thought that way, to be honest with you. And then him interjecting into the, President Trump interjecting into the race. I keep telling everyone, President Trump is not a Republican. He plays Republicans like puppets. He's an elitist.
Nick, from the same token, hold on a second. I want to get a quick answer to this. I know a lot of Republicans who are so upset about this that if Gwen Graham does get the Democratic nomination against Ron DeSantis, they're going to be, whether they're public or privately, hoping that Graham wins. They're so upset about how the Republican primary is playing out.
They're hoping that. I can assure you that's not the case.
Well,
they're not in favor.
We've talked to a few. We do have to take a quick break, and we'll have to be back for final thoughts in just a moment. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Nick, we've covered a lot of ground today. What is the one thing you want our viewers to take away from this conversation tonight?
Well, number one, vote. Vote in the primaries. It's important. Voting's important. And the younger population, vote. Go vote. They're a strong population. The millennials are a great generation, and you should act as such and go out and voice your opinion. Besides that, I would say that people need to stop looking at things as red and blue and start looking at what's right for the country and who's going to best represent that. I believe the Republican Party is in best representation, and I think people need to pay attention to what's going on in the political arena and decide on those issues for themselves.
Yeah, Rodney, there's a lot of there that I would imagine that you would agree with, because we've talked about it a lot. We've talked about voter turnout and sometimes the lack thereof in the African American and Hispanic community, and I would imagine that you are working very hard to get people to come out, whether it's to the primaries or to the general election, because that's where political power comes from.
Right, and absolutely, I definitely agree with my colleague here on some of the points, especially as it relates to vote. We have to get to the polls. My communities have to get to the polls. It's imperative at this time. As far as I agree that a house divided against itself cannot stand. This frivolous Democratic-Republican fiasco is shameful and is detrimental to the country. I noticed that I would interject this in an area of concern that we really need to focus on. I want everybody to pay attention to this. And when President Obama was president, we heard nothing but about the budget every single day, about the budget and spending and spending. We don't hear that anymore.
Well, he also did not pass a balanced budget in his entire term of office.
I just know we have, if you look at the U.S. debt clock, that debt is still racing.
Sure.
And we are right around $23 trillion.
And thank God Trump's in there battling with the economy. We've got the Dow
and we're only getting going here, and it's time to go.
Yeah,
gentlemen, thank you very much. We want to thank our guests, Nick Altair of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Ronnie Jones, the president of the Manatee County NAACP.